This session explores some of the challenges faced every day by IT professionals. We're going to start by introducing our organization so you have a little background knowledge about who we are, where we come from, and what we do. As we prepared for this session, we realized that we're represented by us. Jeff has a very small, Andrew has a very small museum, and Jeff is represented by a small museum in a larger institution. I kind of have a medium-sized museum, and Michael comes from a larger museum. And my notes just went off. We also, come from the East Coast, the West Coast, the South, and the North. And so we have all kinds of different, but as we prepared for this session, we discovered our similarities that we face and the different approaches that we take to meet those challenges. We still have some of our traditional roles that we play, and we looked at some of how things are changing. What can we do with our smaller staffs, and what can we learn from our larger institutions? We will talk a little bit about our underlying infrastructure, our growing storage needs, bring your own device, the bandwidth, and how IT departments are changing to keep up with these needs. Just by show of hands in the audience, how many of you guys are like head of IT departments? So we have a lot of that. How many are more digital media project oriented? Do you have any other roles in here that you'd like to shout out?
IT support.
IT support. Okay. Anybody else?
Curator.
Curator.
Oh, yay.
Yay.
Does the IT director make you come?
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with introductions.
Just go straight down. This slide's a little dense, and we just threw up some stuff, and we're not going to obviously cover it all. I come from the California Academy of Sciences. My name is Michael Webb. I'm the director of IT systems there. More recently, or fairly recently, I was also the director of IT at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, which comprise two museums, the Young and the Legion of Honor. So I'm going to compare a little bit of those two institutions, coming from roughly a double the size in that change in sort of different perspectives, a science, natural history museum, and a more traditional art museum. The California Academy of Sciences is about 630 employees, depending, our standard, depending on how you count FTEs and as needed, things of that nature. The size is about 15 to 20. We can, if you include audio visual, we flex all the way up to 40. We have a huge front of house initiative at the Academy of Sciences. We don't outsource much at the Academy of Sciences. We're fairly self-sufficient. We do ask for some network monitoring on the outside and some software that I can't remember why I wrote that. We'll explore that later on in slides, I suspect. I, in essence, report to a CIO level position who reports into a chief of staff position at the Academy of Sciences. And our role is we do pretty much, as you can see from that little list there, a great deal from front of house all the way through.
I am Janice Craddock, head of IT at the Amon Museum of American Art in Fort Worth, Texas. We have about 140. Again, that depends whether you count security staff or not. Who and about 110 workstations. So we have 3 in our IT staff, and we're a lot of traditional IT support of the infrastructure, AV, help desk. I have, I call myself a working manager because I still do a lot of this support since we only have 3 people on our staff. I have a network manager who keeps up with all the back end stuff and has also taken on a role to help support our website. And then I have a support coordinator who helps with all the help desk, the AV stuff, software installation, all that fun stuff that you all like to do. We do outsource some of our network support. Our web server is located off-site, but we do own it. And what else do we outsource? And web development is now outsourced as well. I report to the Senior Deputy Director, who is also, she's in charge of outreach, collection management, and the operation division. So it's a large division that all reports to the same person. We're all within department as well. Okay. As I said, we do traditional IT support as well as consultants to other departments that do anything related to technology. And the level of involvement there depends really on the expertise of the staff involved with that project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Ruginis from the Chicago Architecture Foundation. We're not technically a museum because we don't actually have a collection, but we pretty much overlap with museums in every other way that I can think of. We are a not-for-profit organization that does education and raises awareness about architecture and design, and we use Chicago as our kind of model canvas for doing so. We mainly do that through giving tours of Chicago. We have over 85 different tours ranging from river cruise to walking tours to bus tours, and all kinds of different subject matter in the context of architecture. We have exhibitions and exhibition spaces. We do educational programming with youth, for youth, and also for adults. We have a retail store. We sell tickets. And like I said, we pretty much do everything else other than manage a collection. Our staff's about 50 to 60 folks, again, including if you count like part-timers and seasonal folk and volunteers. What else do we got going on? My title is Director of IT. I have myself plus a part-time help desk analyst that I recently was able to add about 2 months ago. Both of us kind of sharing responsibilities for IT infrastructure support. I also have reporting to me a manager of digital initiatives who mainly is focused on kind of our public outward-facing like digital outputs, but we're not going to talk about that side of it too much today. I'm going to focus mainly on the IT infrastructure. I would say yes, we do a good deal of outsourcing. We outsource mainly all of our web hosting, including Patronage Online. We also have a slew of managed service providers who work with me to help support our systems. And then we're also adopting several, I guess, softwares as service, if you classify that as outsourcing as well. What else do we got going on? Historically, my position had reported into the CFO of our organization. She left a couple of months ago. So in the interim, I'm reporting to our Vice President of Tours and Retail, which on paper makes probably absolutely no sense to anybody, including those in our organization. However, so far I think it's worked out pretty well, and we might talk a little bit more about that later. Let's see. Our role is basically similar to what we've heard from Michael and Janice. We support everything from our network to our servers that are on site to desktop support. We do project management for technology projects. And I guess the other thing I'll just add is you may have known me in a former life as director of IT at the Field Museum. I was also there for a couple of years before moving about a mile up the road to the Chicago Architecture Foundation about a year and a half ago.
Hello, I'm Jeff Stewart. I'm from the Harvard Art Museums. We're a museum comprised of 3 museums, and we're about 100 or so staff-wise, and our IT is currently running around 3 people. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background why we are at 3 people, yeah. So about 2 or so years ago, we actually had an IT group of about 12 people. And as you'll notice, we are outsourcing quite a number of things here. And we're also in the midst of a building project, and we are, and as part of that, we've been really rethinking about how IT operates for our institution, and especially what can we take advantage of within the larger Harvard umbrella. So we've actually had gone from a 12-member IT staff that included 6 people on an application development group and several sysadmins and help desk support, and a director to 3 people that break down into a project manager, a administrator for our TMS collections management database, and myself. I'm the architect for application development. So, and at this juncture, we don't have an IT director for our group. It's a smaller, much flatter group at this juncture. And so over the last few years, we've worked to migrate a lot of the basic stuff that we used to take care of, like help desk, network and Wi-Fi support, system and database administration, and all kinds of development into other groups within the larger Harvard umbrella. They're all fee-for-service groups. So in my mind, they're the same as any vendor you might go out to. And so that's shifted a lot for us in terms of how we think of what IT does for the museums. So at this point, we've really switched into a role of being taking care of oversight and direction for technology and how it's threaded through the museum as a whole, internal and external facing activities. Also, sort of stepping into a role of dealing with more AV for exhibitions, since so much is driven these days by all kinds of new gadgets and technology. It just was imperative that IT had more of a hand in helping direct how things were deployed in the gallery because of the cloud services and all kinds of other infrastructure that people are wanting to put their files on, just making it all cohesive. And so that moved us more into an R&D role and a project management role, tying all the pieces together. So I think.
So this is a roundtable, so we'll try to engage you all, and we didn't have the 8:30 slot, which it seemed difficult to engage people, and we have a slightly more later morning time. So one thing that I noticed before we go to the next slide is, and I didn't come all the time from museums, I've been in the museum game for 5 years now, is this shift on where we report into. Does this all ring true for everybody? Has there been any shifts? Some of us are reporting more into maybe the programs world, and then there's another shift on I think the roles, in particular the audience engagement. But is there any does this all ring true, or has there been any shifts, CIOs to programs? Anybody have a different one?
Yeah,
Mike?
same. Reporting to the programs area from CFO to the program.
Oh, you did shift recently.
Yeah.
How's that been? Is this thing on?
It's an adjustment. I'm working with marketing and a lot of program people and things like that. So
Yeah.
governance is out the window.
Well, I can put a positive spin on that, because I used to always report to the CFO, and now I do report to more of a program person. And I think it's been really helpful because I'm more involved with the other program people, and talking more to the other heads of the departments within those program areas. And so it puts me more on the front line of projects and knowing what they're planning and what they want to do, and getting IT more on the front end of those projects.
Our business side is not too happy all the time about the transition, because we've shifted away from business side and now to program. So
Yeah.
a lot of business folks.
Yeah.
I sit next to, I'm physically located next to the business office, and so I kind of stay in touch there also.
Well, I mean, not to belabor this point too long, but we still report into the business side, but we have the digital engagement studio, is what we call it now, in our group. And so we're pulled. So, of course, our chief of staff, chief financial officer, values all the enterprise level software, but we recently shifted entirely a huge amount of resources to the digital engagement side. And I was sort of shocked, because now I don't have enough resources to do the other side. And so it's an interesting push and pull, and the Academy of Sciences is very flashy front of house stuff. So it makes a lot of sense.
We can also talk about if people find there's a shift or a change in outsourcing. Do you think there's more or less outsourcing done these days? Anybody?
And we,
More.
More? And why?
There's so much work to do.
I think in our experience, again, in a small organization, kind of the adoption of more outsourcing, I think, correlates with the commoditization of certain IT services that didn't exist just maybe as recent as 2 to 3 years ago. And you know, we don't all go around kind of generating our own electricity or kind of pumping our own water and these kinds of things. I don't think. Maybe as part of an exhibit we do. But as more IT services kind of trend to that commodity or utility direction, I think that's definitely been a correlation, at least for us. And I think it's easier. There's easier adoption for the smaller organizations, just because it is still relatively new. Pricing is kind of entry level. It's still probably relatively high. I think over the course of time, with more competition, pricing will go down. More economies of scale will build, and maybe that'll enable larger organizations to basically take advantage of doing some more of this, I guess what we're calling outsourcing. So I feel fortunate being in the smaller world right now that we can take advantage of a lot of this stuff.
Well, I know at our facility we outsource a huge portion of our IT. I focus 1/3 of my time on IT, and that's about the entire IT department internally. But we outsource most of the rest of it because it gives a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
I make sure that we're choosing proper vendors, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But as when we need high expert technologists for a project, we can just hire that in just for that little piece, and then once that piece is done, it's gone, and we don't have to worry about it. You don't have to have somebody who's an expert across the board at everything who's on staff.
How large is your organization?
Like 25 people.
Okay, so.
You have one IT person, or
Yeah,
half a
not
time.
me, yeah.
Yeah. It does help with when you have, don't have those specialized skills to outsource them.
And just one thing to add, it also allows you to refocus, like on what you should really be doing for your institution.
And not only that, a lot of the firms also have a specialty where, for instance, if you want to do an Exchange upgrade or something like that, they've done it over and over and over and over again, whereas you might be struggling saying, okay, how are we going to go about doing that? So you bring your subject matter experts in to do it, and then do the knowledge transfer to your staff that's on site, and then you can get on to other projects, because there's so many upgrades and infrastructure project that you have to do just to keep current. That's daunting sometimes.
So I'm feeling older than I probably look at this point, but so we've had this discussion via email and all of that, and I do less outsourcing philosophically, and I'm trying to shift and really bring more of that outsourcing in, and I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around it. When I have so many people to support and so many computers to support, the vendor-based solution, there's economy of scale, and I think the outsourcing works up to a point of number of machines and users that you have to support, and then and also for projects like a digital engagement, that has a lifespan, and that seems to make sense to me, because at some point that exhibition is going to go, and you're usually happy about it. With the day-to-day operations, I get worried about being too reliant on a vendor for the solutions, and then I get worried about being able to support when something goes down, because at the end of the day, my CIO and the chief of staff are emailing me about the fact that they will never open up a ticket, right? Even though they say everybody else open, they always email me directly at 4 a.m. because I don't know why they work at 4 a.m. Oh gosh, this is on. But anyway, but the point is that I get worried about being able to support that without being able to have the flexibility of getting to my staff and be able to have direct support. But I think there's a role in there, and I think maybe we'll have more of a discussion around it in a further slide. But I'm trying to figure out that balance, and I'm trying to figure out that economy of scale between number of computers and users and when it is right and not right to do that. For example, the smaller the group makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's a change kind of too. And maybe 5 years ago, we outsourced a lot more of our network support, and we've tried to bring that more in-house, because that is something that we rely on more heavily. And interestingly enough,
we're pushing that out. Let's flow this slide a little bit. This is sort of a general overview of the sort of, I try to generalize this as much as possible. It's obviously written for the California Academy of Sciences, but in general, the online digital engagement world, we have a very big research area. We have a ton of researchers, and they're a whole different world, and trying to support them, especially in light of Sandy and disaster recovery and all the massive amounts of data that they keep, and they don't put it on our corporate networks is a real challenge for us, without a doubt, and I don't have a solution besides we buy more storage. And then you have to have a dedicated person to go down there to every single silo within the researchers and work with them on their individual solution to get it onto your corporate network. That is a expensive process. Front of house, we think of point of sale, enterprise systems, and then back of the house with your storage and your servers. And we can go around a little bit to see how that sounds right.
That sounds right. But I think the shift is more support for online and front end support.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Ditto.
It's all very true to everybody. Anything missing on that slide? PowerPoint puts you into little boxes, so 4 felt pretty good.
I know we're involved a lot more with operational type building systems, more signs, security system, parking lot systems.
Yeah.
HVAC.
Oh man, really?
Yeah. All of our HVAC is all completely automated, including humidification and everything, and we have to deal with occupancy and when people are in the building, when they're not in the building, and all that kind of stuff.
Security is I've noticed has become more IT and less facilities of late.
I don't know if it's a separate area or maybe a subgroup of digital engagement, but I'm finding the last 5 years at our place, the role we're playing in marketing, right alongside of the CIO-CMO relationship, is probably one of the biggest relationships at our place. And we're being challenged more and more and more to be progressive about engaging people. Not so much in collections and assets, we're doing that too. Right. But more targeted marketing and channeling our customers and that kind of thing.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because you think about expert users and where they used to exist, and I don't know about anybody's organization, but I've noticed that expert users that we used to consider just
power users
in the departments are starting to move and shift over. SEO in the marketing area, all of a sudden we've got this SEO person, and I don't know, and they kind of move back and forth between marketing and here, and it's perfect because they do have to add a lot to the online experience, and yet it's a truly marketing role, but they need a lot of support, and they've been partnering really well with us, but it's a good example of partnering. But
our marketing is actually considering, they're trying to go after a chief digital officer position now, which is arising out of marketing, not IT. And I'm finding this is not this is not an oddity. This is starting to happen.
I'm finding I can't respond to that while being recorded.
Can we turn the thing on?
So I think part of what has to happen to sort of not stop those things from happening, but really shifting the perception of what IT has been. And I think maybe the next slide is going to allude to that.
So let me introduce this, and you can continue, because I know this was a polarizing slide in the group, and I had to change it many times. And I think the word traditional. So this slide, we want to talk a little bit here about the roles of IT, and the word traditional has a bad connotation, I think. And I was thinking when we were putting together this slide and this presentation, I was thinking a lot about my time at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, which was a very traditional museum and a traditional structure, and go into the Academy of Sciences, which was it's a science museum, and so there's a lot of stuff that wants technology to the forefront. We had this beautiful brand new building, platinum LEED, environmental stuff. We have a living roof, all of that sort of things. And so obviously they really value technology at this point. And so when I put this together, I was actually missing this side of the world which is that when I was with the Academy of Sciences, it's driven by executive leadership, so it's a very top-down. We have strategic planning initiatives, and that's constant. We have steering committees. We have a whole system of program and project management. There's a whole way of which every project will go through a certain methodology, which in a lot of ways is very refreshing. We can walk into a project, the business will know how that's going to be run, and that was established by the CIO, Kim Lee, there. And it was really great for me to walk into that. However, there's a lot of structure. I do miss the autonomy. I miss the organic nature of projects sometimes. I miss being agile. I don't know if I miss ad hoc project management. And I miss my smaller IT staff. I miss my old guys, you know. And I like my new staff just as much. But so that was what that was. I just want to set that up a little bit.
And I had something right there before you go on, is that, you know, when Mike first started this stuff, I'm telling you, it was, you know, he looked at it as traditional versus innovative. And we kind of looked at it as you have to be both. Mm-hmm. You have to have some of that traditional IT support and infrastructure, but you have to be innovative too, and you have to have, and when we're changing to be more strategic planning and more
yes. Yeah.
You know, executive team driven, I guess you would say.
You basically this is a flow or an and/or.
Yeah, and so in my mind, these bullet points actually should flip places.
I can do that.
Can you work that magic? And you know, at Harvard we've scaled our staff down a lot, and it's because of all those services that we've moved into Central Harvard IT, all these commodity services that they can provide to us now, that has really had to shift how we think about what we do about IT, and that forced us to put us in a self-marketing mode where we have to change the perception of what IT is within our organization and what they bring to the other groups in the organization. We're not just about providing networking and email anymore. We're actually there to help brainstorm and be creative about what technology can do for the museum itself. And you know, I think this also comes back to the notion that there's a smaller institution can breed that kind of change a lot easier than a larger institution. You know, so in fact, like under traditionally you have small IT staff. I mean, we have a small IT staff. You know, so it works out for us to think differently. There's
and by IT being a part of the strategic planning and those other teams, you know, we can communicate how we can be more helpful to those projects up front.
Yeah, that's a shift I'd like to call out, is that strategic planning or being part of strategy. I think that's definitely a shift or evolution in recent years. I can speak for my current organization and the previous, you know, field museum, both of which in our most recent rounds of strategic planning included heavy technology/digital components or goals, in fact. At CAF right now, our currently ratified strategic plan currently has 8 goals as part of it. It wasn't always 8. We used to started out with 4, and then it fluctuated up to 6, and then went down to 5, and then we ended up with 8. And lo and behold, that 8th goal, I don't think it's coincidence at all, or I don't think it's not coincidence. Like it's making a digital leap forward, and it wasn't on the leadership team's mind in the early parts of the strategic planning process, but through all the meetings and discussions and workshops, this notion of digital and technology just kept coming up through everyone else's goals, and there was so much overlap. And so It just, I kind of sat aside because I knew this. I was hoping and knowing that this was going to happen, but eventually one day somebody just said, you know what, maybe this needs to be its own goal, its own focus, its own initiative. And when I heard that, I was like, yes. I think that's definitely, hopefully all of our organizations are trending in that direction. I don't know who's gone through strategic planning in the last year or two, or who's going to be going through it in the next year or two, but if you haven't yet, I would have a high expectation that your organization incorporate this as a very unique, special focus, and not just as a sub-bullet point of some other sub-bullet point under raising revenue or under interpretive work and engaging the public and things like that. And you might have to lead that. You might have to insert yourself if your organization doesn't have CIO level leadership, or if you're reported, to a programmatic area or a CFO, it might don't leave it up to others to make this happen. You might have to get out of your kind of comfort zone and force this issue. I highly recommend that. Encourage you to do that.
Yeah, you definitely have to get out in front, or else you're going to be perpetually plagued by the problems of people wedging in technology at the last minute. Something we've talked about.
How many do strategic planning in the room?
Nice.
A lot. So that's. I would wonder if we asked that question 6 years ago. Well, let me follow that up. How many do strategic planning within as part of the institutional process?
Nice.
Pretty close. So 6 years ago, I probably was doing this strategic planning, but I just did it by myself. And now it's incorporated. Does that sound? When you were doing strategic planning 6 years ago, was that more of a departmental thing, or was it continued to be the same? Yeah.
We've had a bit of almost a shift backward in a sense, but it was just through change in leadership where with the new CEO, planning got very concentrated in a set of VPs, if you will. So directors at my level used to be involved, and the core planning got so focused on at the VP level, and I report to Chief Operating Officer, like the CFO. So I actually find I have to insert myself in doing exactly what you're saying to make sure I'm still a part of that process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a challenge. So we started thinking about changes in recent years. And when I did this slide, there was a lot of other stuff, and I was pretty cranky at the time. And I kept some of those notes, and I might read them all. But so I'm not sure if now is there growth or there is shrinkage, Jeff? I mean,
I think.
There's growth, but it's in different areas. As we've talked, I've kept saying how all of the infrastructure stuff I push further and further into the back of my mind because it's now being taken care of by other groups. I just I can pay somebody to give me network connectivity and internet access and email, and I don't care how they deliver it to me. Just guarantee that the service is there based on our agreement. And, I think of growth in terms of the types of projects that we're now taking on and the way that we integrate with departments we haven't traditionally integrated with, working far more closer for education and marketing and our art director and communications group and curatorial, just working on more forward-facing things and not worrying about all the under the hood activities. So it's just shifted. Mm-hmm. It's shifted what we do, and that it's going to continue to grow because people are becoming more and more creative with technology as it becomes more pervasive and easier to use. So there's not going to be any stop there.
And that's kind of what I was going to say too. It's the growth of the IT's role within the institution. Mm-hmm. It's not just the infrastructure and the backbone anymore. It's not just. Yeah, and we're taking over even within the infrastructure. We're taking over more. We're taking over security systems because they're becoming more computerized, and HVAC systems because those departments don't have the technical expertise or the computer expertise to support those systems. And so even within infrastructure, our role is growing, as well as within the institution and taking on more roles there.
And all of our lighting, all of our galleries, all of that stuff is all controlled We even have some AV items that are controlled
Yeah.
that within the building, that are signage and that kind of things and so on.
Yeah.
I think another element of growth that I have seen and would expect to continue seeing is fiscal growth, or financial kind of like spending and investment, and maybe specifically with like operating budgets or OpEx spending. Again, if we talk more about kind of outsourcing and kind of commoditization of services, I think if our organizations are going to take advantage of those things, we need to be fighting for and kind of justifying shifts from heavy capital investments to shifting those dollars into more of an operating mode. And what I haven't done this yet, but what I theorize is it's not a one-to-one shit. It's not a one-to-one trade. Like you don't just take a dollar out of capital and move a dollar into operating. I think in order to be successful with this, you need to kind of show your CFOs and justify that, maybe it's 50 cents to the dollar or something like that. But I think there's a gain there. I know probably most of the CFOs around are going to kind of cringe or kind of shoo you out of the room when you might suggest something like this, Casey. But I think we should expect, in order to enable these shifts that we're talking about, like I think it's going to be necessary to shift some of that spending from one mode to another. And I know I've certainly seen that, and I've been fortunate. Maybe my recent organizations have both kind of gotten on board with that.
So planning has been a kind of a hot topic, I think, here at these sessions, and so. I've been thinking about this, that just because we're in IT doesn't necessarily mean we're really great project managers. It just means that we've done it a lot because we have a lot of projects. But sometimes we don't do it as, so there's a whole skill base, right? There's the whole thing there. I just wanted to show, because this is not my process, this is actually my boss's process. I just want to show a couple slides about what she puts together from a planning process. And she's constantly thinking about these strategies. So the director of the entire academy, we have a digital strategy. She puts together five-year plans. Every process will have a strategy, a 5-year plan, implementation of a 5-year plan. We'll go through these assessment stages. That's a pretty aggressive amount of work. Project requirements, this is maybe the key template that we apply. Every project will have an executive sponsor from our SLT, which is our senior leadership team. This is a slide about our steering committee for the Webb. So those will be the main, how that committee gets formed. There'll be a core team. And notice the top bullet point there, project managers. Or program managers or business analysts will be a part of that. That to me has been just a huge shift, and this is mirroring. And her background is from a Big 5 consulting company, so she's applying a very corporate, enterprise level model to a nonprofit museum, and it's been fascinating to watch the melding of that. And I'm no longer watching because now I'm in it. But and then you have your stakeholders over there. I just wanted to just quickly show that because to me that's been the shift for me in the planning component. And it's also been a shift in the staffing level where we're having a little bit more of these business analysts in our groups. Does that ring true for everybody, or is that something does it make you cringe, or does it worry you, or are we isolated?
I think it helps to have different levels of business analysts, project managers. I think your projects are done more on time, and you're actually addressing the requirements of your client more and more by doing that. And you have a better idea of what your financial outcome will be, how much it's going to cost as well by doing so. Our challenge is the number of projects we've got, and we have to make a decision every year, around this time of year, how many projects we'll undertake from all the different branches and divisions within the museum. We have to have a good balance from that. But then the struggle is They have all these projects, and those are their projects, but the struggle is the infrastructure, keeping the infrastructure up to date. And that, again, takes business analysts and project managers to do. And personally, we've been slipping a little bit, and it's trying to get back up there. Because if your infrastructure isn't up to date, it will affect all of the potential projects that you want to do in the future. So, and it's very costly to keep your infrastructure up to date as well.
Well said. So I wasn't so cranky when I wrote this slide because.
So I think.
Go ahead.
So just to add to that, something that we do. There's something that's been instituted now for I don't know, maybe 2 years, is a central museum's approval process, project planning process. It's a form that everyone has to fill out for any project, and on that it's very clear that any technology and IT infrastructure and need from ITs is written into that, and so that brings us all to the table at the inception and the initial discussions for the project, where we can even say, like, we know you want to do X, but our infrastructure actually can't support it. If we need to boost it, you got to get us some money under the banner of this project to help us do that, and it could actually be written in as part of that project to help boost some of those pieces. So that's I can't say I can think of any specific examples where that's worked for us yet, but that's the sentiment that we have in place at this point.
Mm-hmm. The infrastructure has to be part of the planning.
It has to be known across the board. What it takes to do these the types of projects that people are coming up with these days.
And we do that when we write grants and things like that. We consider the infrastructure and how much sort of space are we going to need for these projects that we're doing, and bandwidth and things like that. And I was going to say part of that, it's good for strategic planning and project planning, and that's all really good. But I think just the weekly planning is also good. Having weekly meetings with staff, and just so you know what's going on in the rest of the institution. I find that there's good intentions about getting IT involved, but sometimes it does slip through that they don't. Not everyone thinks about like the whole what it might include technology-wise. Yeah. And so just by having those ongoing conversations with other staff, you say, you get that aha moment, like, well, let's talk about this a little more. It might include more technology or more infrastructure.
Janet?
What we've started to do is we started a content and interpretation team that meets, that includes, what's in my area is database, web, social media, and then everything to do with technology. And what we were finding is projects would come in the back door, and then we couldn't figure out how to get those projects done. So we have a team that actually meets, that includes different people from various areas. And the exhibition project has to include funding for a project if we can't do it in-house. So we've just, in the last couple of years, we've had a change in directorship, and we're looking forward to having all of those projects come together so they don't just come in the back door, and you can actually fully fund them and have them be part of the project. But you have to be in a conversation from the very beginning. Yeah. Otherwise it sneaks in somehow.
That's the key. Have to be in that conversation from the beginning. Yeah.
And that's one of the trickier parts, because our organization doesn't have a director of IT. I'm the IT guy, and that's as far as it goes. And fortunately, the managing director there, who's new on, immediately said, "Why aren't you at the table with the directors?" And I'm like, tradition? I don't know.
We're never sure.
And we've tried a couple of times trying to insert me in, and it's gotten a lot of pushback of why is he in the room? It's like, because none of you can answer the questions that you need to answer in this room on your own.
Right. And I also find that, being there, they may not think that you need to be there, but there may just be a hint or a clue of something that somebody said that triggers something in your mind that says, hey, we need to talk about this more. It is going to affect the infrastructure of the museum. And so sometimes you sit through meetings that don't really apply, but it's that one meeting a month or so that you really need to be there, that you're really thankful for being there.
It is a hard balance, because in a lot of ways their intentions are good. They say, well, this meeting doesn't have a lot to do with you. It's mostly not related, and it's probably their intentions are and the other half of it is that they don't want to expose a lot of the process until, it's the same way with this. It's like, why would I invite the curator to my IT planning? We don't exactly know how we're going to solve this problem, and we don't want to expose all of our weaknesses to an outsider, in essence, and that's how you look at it a little bit. So you can feel both of that push and pull. And it's a hard way to get involved in. I had a great deal of difficulty at the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco. I mean, it was really hard to get in the room. They feel like they've inserted you at the right moment, which is last. Right. To them, that is the absolute appropriate step to insert you. And so we would try to stay nimble and insert a lot of infrastructure pieces to scale. We just go to meetings and listen, and we try to insert it and try to be really planful around that. But I found that this piece has become a shift for me, and the most recent change for me is that content is now king, and that everything is driven off of content, and the content is growing in dramatic leaps. And so now we have to be inserted first, and good luck, and everybody will have different strategies, but getting in that room at the right place is really going to be a big shift. I'm not exactly sure how that goes. One of the reasons why I did go to the Academy of Sciences is because technology is so important to them that everything starts with that department, and so I just wanted to have a refreshing moment in my life for a little bit. So that was one of the reasons I shifted.
I think the key is communications, and it's just keep up those conversations, with your other counterparts in other departments and the person you report to, and let them know how your area, your technology or infrastructure is going to be affected by these projects. We have a question in the back.
Have any of you been faced with the challenges or demands of providing business intelligence and how to build business intelligence within your organization, from not collections, but just all that data? How to make decisions, or your manager's asking for this, your director's asking for it?
It is the top priority of my department, and one of the reasons why I came on board to the Academy of Sciences was that exact thing. And they have spent a lot of money over the past 3 years since they opened the building, or 4 years opened the building, and to use my boss's words, failed miserably 3 times, which is a difficult project to inherit. A lot of money has been spent, a lot of misdirections on reporting, and I won't go into the details, but in essence, it was too big, too grand, too fast, too much, and they got 1 report out of it. And so that's the sort of a summary is waterfall versus incremental process. And they did a waterfall initially. So it's another big shift. That's missing from this presentation. It's a good point.
It's refreshing to hear that from a larger institution, because we're sort of faced with the same request and keep pushing it off. Like we can't really deal with it.
Yeah.
And also keep saying like it's a really hard problem to deal with.
It's a really hard problem.
So
yes.
So if you can crack it, I don't feel so bad about it. Keep pushing it off.
I think what happens is that I think business intelligence, which if I had known when I started off as a database doing report writing back in the 90s, if I knew that the word business intelligence was going to mean a huge new career and market and salary structure, I would have stuck with it. Yeah. But it sounds so simple, and it gets presented so simple, and IT has become we're a product of our own successes. Our surface layer is so simple sometimes. The industry's gotten so good that you often hear, well, it's just easy, just do it. Just do that, it's easy. And I'm like, well, I know it's easy, it's sort of, well, it's not. But, so business intelligence has an equally problem in that. No, go ahead, please.
Regarding business intelligence, is anybody here on the exact opposite side of wanting to be at the table for that and that being the hardest place to get to? Or is it just me? We have a phenomenal business intelligence structure that is completely managed by marketing, kept in an armored silo. And there's no interchange with anything else that we're doing in our development and our other parts of that. And it's really now, we'll tell you what you need to know out of this.
Holy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got the same, you just preempted exactly what I was going to say. 7 years ago, we tried to show this vision for business intelligence and how to bring all the systems together. We were going to build this whole thing. The organization wasn't ready for it, and like a thief in the night, marketing came from nowhere, inserted their custom CRM system, and now we've got something that we're going to be dealing with for a long time, even talks to nothing.
Yeah, I think it's coming for us. I haven't been asked, IT or my group hasn't been asked explicitly to own this or do it yet, but we do have a database group, I guess, our committee that has representatives from all these departments. We have somebody kind of like the power users of our ticketing system and our retail system and Razor's Edge and IT. And so right now, we've got a committee that's, I think, going to be embarking on trying to figure some of this out. I see one of the main challenges or barriers to success being ownership of this. Like, the committee can't be held accountable, like an individual can be held accountable. But I think it's a starting point for us, and I think eventually it's going to evolve into some kind of individual ownership. I don't know where that's going to ultimately end, if it's going to be in my area or elsewhere, or perhaps a new role or new position to be created for our organization. But I think that's how we're dealing with it right now as a committee representatives. That we all think there's value, we all think there's a lot to be gained. We just don't know how to figure it out yet. Yeah, Casey?
Some ways to win people over on the business intelligence, but you're trying to get into the system, is go dig something up and show them, and wow them with some little project. Show them how you can connect to data. And it really changes people's point of view, and they're all of a sudden open. It may be a bad thing too, because all of a sudden they want more. We've got a handful of data views and SQL queries that we use that when we finally put them in place, the users are just like, you've just taken 5 or 6 hours out of my work week now, because I can simply go into Excel, which I use all the time, and do these sort of things. So it can be as easy as just making a few minor changes or putting a few products in front of people.
See, in our situation, that's what we did 8 years ago. We built an entirely accessible system. Anybody, clerk to president, can literally go in the browser and get any business data. But it became more an issue of control, because marketing, you're dealing with the same thing. Yeah. Marketing wanted that system. They wanted complete control and ownership of that. But it was for marketing's purposes, not the business enterprise purposes. But they have the power and the money and the clout to assert that in the situation, even though we've got this other thing which is satisfying most of the organization's needs. But so it became more of a political thing. So it's the same with you.
Yeah, and it's one of those uncomfortable shifts where, for marketing's purposes, it's a great thing, and marketing represents revenue, and so it's really hard to argue against it, and just to go forward to them and have to say, well, share, yes, it's great, but everybody could benefit from this, and there's no argument I haven't found an argument that's convincing to tell that group to share, because they're getting everything they need out of it, and everybody looking top down from there is getting everything they need out of it, and so where's the benefit? Yeah. And there's not even, in some cases, access to start one of those to demonstrate how we could benefit from this thing. We had a top 5 consultant group help us with the strategic planning and our data management, and they saw this, and they presented it to the leadership team, and everybody just nodded. Yeah. That's how it is.
That's exactly what we were thinking. Do that, or But the flip side of it is maintenance, and the flip side of it is sometimes the locking down is the inability to actually scale a model for people to be able to get what they need. So you bought a solution, and actually this morning's presentation and I'm forgetting the gentleman in the back of your presentation this morning, I'm sorry, I apologize.
So I was talking some notes there.
Some really nice stuff about maintenance on actually after you've done a project, and that when you put something in, are you thinking about how you're going to maintain it afterwards? So you'll get this shiny object in, and then how do you maintain it further? Business intelligence strikes me as one of those areas where the cube's only good as that moment. Are you going to add more? How are you going to do more, add more dimensions or what have you to those reporting tools? And that takes time and task and money and resources, and then we're back to the outsource versus in-house, and who's going to maintain this. And I don't think a lot of thought goes into a lot of those sort of things. Okay, so we're talking about a lot, and we're doing a lot, and so how do you avoid this? What's that?
You can't avoid that?
So, sort of a moment of pause. I stole this slide from my boss. So,
does anybody not feel like this? No hands.
Any suggestions on how to avoid feeling that you're busy, you're at capacity, and it's not sustainable?
That's why we're here. Asking you guys.
Outsource.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it before, but you really need to get some sort of governance thing, which is this is what we do, and everything that goes through. Before anyone even applies for a grant or anything, they just need to say, this is the technology we have. It might change, it might vary, and if you've got a better idea, we might change it. But actually, it's got to go through a process that says, okay, great idea, brilliant, but in our strategy for the next year or so, how does that fit in? Is it just going to kill everything else? And so you need that sort of overview. And it needs to be open to change.
Yeah.
But you have to have some sort of control, otherwise you just end up with chaos and, you will left holding the sort of wreckage, basically.
So what do organizations do? Does anybody else deal with this, where the organization is kind of pushing that paradigm? I want that, what you just said, but they almost want an implied chaos where they believe that these new things can happen by loosening the chains and allowing everybody to take part and kind of do their own thing. That's what we're facing right now. So we've really got no backing to be able to do governance at all anymore.
Yeah, the governance.
It's tough.
The governance is key. Coming from a place where there was no governance in the sense that I would form an IT steering committee, but there was no governance, so it was fake governance because I didn't have any structure above. I tried to form structure in the middle, and the steering committee was just really a way for them to pick me off as a group.
This is your old place, right?
This is my old place. At the new place, the governance is so strong that I can give you really positive feedback on that. We actually recently declared, not at the IT level, but the senior leadership level, that the business wasn't ready to do this, and we will not do this until the business is ready. And then that kills the maverick sliding in, because they really get slapped.
What I was going to say too is, you go back to your strategic planning and your senior management involvement in the IT and how IT fits into that strategic planning. And if it's not in the strategic plan, you don't do it.
We do the same thing. If we've got 5 key elements, and every time they sent us their projects, and we have to evaluate what they want us to do, we think that they fall under these 5. And if they don't, we go back and say, I'm sorry, but they don't fall under these 5. And also, can you also prove business requirements for it? Is there why? Give us more, because it's amazing how people send you a one-liner and they tell you how important it is, and you say, okay, well, give us a little more on here so that we can, see if we can find them within those 5. And sometimes we see that the technology isn't here right away. We know that eventually it'll be there, so we'll tell them, well, it's very nice you want to do that, but we can't do it this year because of these reasons. But it's a good idea what you want, but IT sometimes I find where it's hard to be able to promote yourself because they want everything from you, and if you always say no, they'll say, well, there again, we're going to ask
there
IT.
You go again, saying no.
I know. This is 3 years I've asked for this, and they're going to come back to me and say, no, yet again. You know, it's
unilateral outsourcing as well, which is dangerous anywhere. So it's like, I can't be bothered to wait because you're in control of the market, therefore I'll just buy this thing. And then like later on, it's like, well, can you just help me forward? It doesn't do what we want anymore. That's really dangerous.
You can't say no to that either.
No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think one way with the governance is you do need to be open, because actually, you know, as we're saying now, things will change, and they will. What you're doing now won't be what you're doing in potentially 2 or 3 years time. But you can have sort of things like frameworks where we're not going to agree every single bloody project, but we'll agree that as long as it's one of these, then you can do it. You know, and then you just have to program those, as opposed to sort of each one is an individual thing. So you can say, right, okay, you're free to do that, and then you can push the management of the program. And so we've just moved, split out the technical stuff and the content quite sort of clearly. So there's like, not I want to build a microsite or I want to build an app, but you know, we have technology, or we have a business as usual and a content program. So over here on the left, you have these are the things where if you just do their job, they'll go on the web. So like if you put something in the collections management system, it just automatically publishes. So if anyone comes to you with a thing like, I really want to do this amazing thing about this object, and say, great, shove it in the system, because it will just go on the web. But
right.
That's, you know, you don't need to do it, we don't need to get involved. And then you have these units of content, which are, we have articles, we have videos, we have whatever they are, sort of things. And these types of things, we already support. And if you want to do any one of those, it's really just a matter of programming. So how many videos do we do a year? How much money do we spend on, you know, researching these things? And then everything else is this new technology to the organisation. We might want to do it, but it's got to be seen in the round. It's, you know, everyone's got to put their pitch into one. It might be that actually we do change the technology, or it might just be that's a stupid idea. So it's easier to say than it is to actually enforce or to manage.
So you never said no once at all right there. But you know what the entire business here is? Because I've never said no in 5 years. Never said it. I have never said it. But if you go back and you interview every single partner department over those 5 years, anything else they think I say? No. Mike always says no.
I find that the most productive time I have is working with program managers to put the question to them, what is your priority? What is the most important thing you want us spending your time on? Because I can give you this many hours a week or a month or commit a certain amount of time. And after that, if I have a line staff come to me, I say, talk to your program manager. Your program manager is a person who defines the priorities for your program. Yeah. It still doesn't mean they don't say I say no. Right. At least I can sleep thinking that I don't say no. I say it's up to you to decide what's priority.
There's some process involved.
Right.
So I think there are. I think there are two things. One really sort of overarching thing is that sort of stepping at a higher level, what we really need to do is start fostering a much more radical culture of transparency within our institutions. Like, what's on your mind? What are you working on? What are you doing? Like, where do you want to go? And then also change the language we use, you know, so people don't hear no anymore or interpret it as no. Really, and then rethink about what we're trying to do for the business itself. Like, you know, I'd like to imagine that IT is here to make everyone else's life simpler, so they can do their work with less obstacles in their way. And so I think there's a lot of issues with communication and language, and then institutionally issues with transparency. Too many people working in silos and not sharing data and not sharing tools they have, and not understanding that if knowledge within your departments can flow freely, there's going to be a greater sense of empowerment within that staff, and it's going to create a better culture of wanting to do just better work through and through the institution. And I feel like IT can be a sort of a hub for helping make that happen.
I think all IT people want to help, and they do really want to make the projects work and everything, but a lot of what other people hear is just the limitations that we're putting on them. You know, and it is changing the language we use.
We're plagued by being pragmatic.
We have two here.
I think the cross communication between departments and the strategic planning is been a key in our institution. We used to be at a point where traveling exhibits would come through, and the IT side was kind of an afterthought. You know, by the way, we need all these projectors and TVs installed, and we've got a week to do it.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
And nowadays, you know, we've shifted in the last couple of years to being more involved with the whole design process up front. You know, the curators and the designers and us, we all get together and meet and plan before it happens, you know, and that's been a great change for everybody. It saves us a lot of time and effort.
So how did that happen though? Who initiated the?
I kind of did. I stepped up and said, you know, this is crazy. We can't be doing this. You know, we can't. You know, the show opens next week. You can't all of a sudden say we need all these components. We need to be involved in it, you know, from the get-go and from the start.
Well, and sometimes things I've run into, it's in little ways, even something as small. I mean, we had our marketing and our events and volunteer staff say, hey, yeah, we've researched all this new volunteer software, blah, blah, blah. I said, and I turned around and went, how many hours do you guys spend doing that? Because do you know that we have Donor Perfect, which has a volunteer? Well, it does? Yes, we don't have to spend any money. You guys have tried it out for free. You know, so there was that. And then we had someone else who, our development department, who said, you know, oh, we're going to go take Donor Perfect to the cloud. And my only question was, can you afford to be down for 3 days? And they were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, Donor Perfect just last week was down for 3 days in the cloud. Not any of the data lost or anything or jeopardized, but someone just stole their URL for a while. I said, being in-house, we don't have that problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay.
I think a lot of the time, the reason that we're saying no, or that the perception is because it takes, you know, we have the same number of hours in the day as anyone else. And so when we're addressing, we're busy, we're at capacity, this isn't sustainable, but let's work toward a solution that is. What we've said is no to their idea. Based on perfectly rational things that affect everybody, but that can't be communicated. So, how long does it take to install a mail server? I install Windows in 35 minutes. The mail service can't be that different.
You're just clicking buttons, aren't you?
How long does it take to migrate your mailboxes?
Click faster. Just click faster.
Run another wire. Can we turn the power up a little? But trying to explain those things turns into no too, because the only thing that's a yes is, hey, that's a great idea. Sure, here it is. You know, for any one of these things.
I want to share.
These are all no's. These are variations on no.
Yeah.
I want to share a different, changing topics a little bit, getting back to this, the essence of this slide here. Share a story and it regards IT disaster, and I think disaster can be something that can help overcome, you know, this type of slide. Like this slide, maybe to me, kind of it implies like, you know, bend but don't break. Well, what happens if you break? And in my case, back in August of this year, we incurred, I guess, what qualify as an IT disaster. We had one of our servers that we host on site and semi-manage ourselves, or myself, incur a RAID controller failure. The server itself was over 7 years old. And had like all core services running through it, including DNS, DHCP. It was a primary domain controller and our Razor's Edge database server. All that went down in a blink, in a matter of a second, on a Friday night at 7:30. And so,
at least you had the weekend, man. I'm always getting Monday at 6. What are you talking?
3 days to fix it.
So
sorry, that is not funny.
No, I can.
It's in the past. You can laugh at it.
I can look back and laugh at it now. But basically, so I spent about the next 12 days in a row I spent the next 12 days in a row working 10 plus hours each of those days consecutively. Saw, you know, very little daylight and family and et cetera. Restoring all those services, migrating them, you know, to other boxes on the network and such. And you know, it was definitely not a fun point in my career or my life. Very stressful. And you know, I thought for sure on the tail end of it, I was going to, get fired, or I was done for, whatever. And that may still happen, but I don't think so. I think what has actually happened is this has been an enabler to open up organizational eyes to like this type of scenario. And I in the moment I didn't really consider that or didn't think about that, but I was really, really surprised and really pleased on some of the reception I got from leadership and my management to basically say, okay, wow, how did this happen? How do we prevent this from happening again? I'm guessing you're just, because we ask you to do so many things as an IT operation, like, how can we can understand how this happened and how this happened, but let's talk about the future and let's talk about preventing this from happening again. So fortunately, we are also right now going through, budgeting for next calendar year, and I've been just amazed so far at kind of the reception that, again, I've had from senior management to kind of throw some new dollars and proactive dollars. So basically, we have some very new and large line items on my 2013 budget, including like bringing in a whole managed services vendor to monitor and basically provide remediation for any server-related issues. And so I guess I don't know how to fabricate this. And I'm not promoting espionage or anything like that, but I think if you do incur situations like that, like, look at the bright side, or in the moment it's gonna be hard because it's gonna be very stressful, but just maybe remember this and kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're going through it, like how can we see this as an opportunity for opening eyes and for getting ourselves out of this type of mode moving forward.
We find it on all levels of the company across the board. I mean, it's not until preparatory doesn't make the opening day of the exhibit that they begin to realize you're understaffed in preparatory. If it's it's just no one gets it until there's an actual crash that happens.
That's one little disaster, unfortunately, to focus everybody's attentions.
And it's also a budgeting issue, too. It makes people aware that you really need a server every year. Yeah, we have 16 of them, and we'll only buy one a year. We're still kind of behind the curve. And so communicating that, and how to budget for the ongoing support of our infrastructure when we have all those little shiny projects going on out there.
Well, I found it handy with my boss. What I do is I give him an initial budget that doesn't have a lot of explanation of what we're doing with the budget, because the initial budget is always the pie in the sky. And then he'll ask, okay, we need to cut the budget. And as we're cutting the budget, I start giving him the risks and say, okay, we can do this, and this is what we're jeopardizing. We can do this, this is what we're jeopardizing.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, so along those lines, the risk assessment is a key communication tool. You're not saying no, you're saying, I think actually in your session as well, somebody said, my job is to say yes with information.
Yes, but
here's what that yes means.
Because they also put the responsibility on you. Look, we're just trying to do this. Why are you stopping me? It's like, no, you're making this decision.
Yes.
If you don't give me this money, you are making this decision for future failure, not me. Because I can only do so much, and that is the thing that you need to get people. Because it's not a fight. It's it's as we say, it should be an open.
It should be collaboration, right?
I'm excited to do all 20 projects this year. Which one do you want?
Underestimate the power of personal sort of enjoyment either. So like a lot of times, all these discussions we should do this because it's reasonable to find. But actually, if you're in a nice little situation where you like doing what you're doing, you don't want to hear that actually you've got to do it properly and organise and project manage and stuff. Because it's not fun, basically. It's much more fun to do it in an uncontrolled environment. It's a natural instinct, like, let's just do it kind of thing. And oh yeah, shiny and whatever. But it's, it's your job to basically be sensible on this stuff. And that's, seems boring. But I mean, data and, this is what happens. When you ask me to do this, and when you don't give me money to upgrade this system, 3 out of 4 people can't buy a ticket when they've started to try. That's what it's costing you by not giving you this amount of money to change it. So if you're happy with that, don't give me the money. Right. But I'm telling you, this is what you're doing by not giving it. So it is quite a powerful tool.
It is.
The other one is actually forcing people to experience what the user does. It's like, we need this new system because this doesn't work properly. So whatever. But if you actually make people do the same thing the users do, this is good.
Oh, that is a really good one. But it feels bad to me because I'm exposing somehow a weakness that's not related to me. But because it's on the web, they relate it to me.
Yeah.
My last name doesn't help, which is Webb. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the things that we went through an exercise in our organization was customer corridors. We went and examined probably about 10 different revenue lines, transactional processes. How do you rent the facility? How do you make a donation? How do you become a member? And we brought 15 staff members together. They first had to just do the math, but then we sat down for 2 days away from the property and just went through everybody's process maps. And it was a great exercise of breaking down silos and understanding where information flows were causing problems.
Yeah.
And it sort of opened people's eyes because you had people representing all the different elements of the institution sitting there listening to the pain points and the problems that everybody was having. Unfortunately, a tremendous amount of it came back to the technology and the inability for our systems to move information around. But it was a real good exercise of sort of breaking down those silos and helping people figure out, what does everybody else do? Why are you so busy? I don't know what you're doing that you're so busy. I could walk up and you're reading your email. You're not busy.
You're pushing buttons again.
Right.
So I hear, so the solution for this is, one thing that IT has to get better at is building relationships and communication, and forming the strategic initiatives around that. And that's a shift, I think, for us as IT directors and those involved in technology.
And going out of our comfort zone to talk to other people more.
That's definitely the implication.
Yeah.
Boy, because I'll revert back to whatever I'm working on more than a meeting. I'm certain of that sometimes.
From the outsider's perspective, find an advocate. That's why I'm here. This is not my background. I know nothing about servers. I just want it to work. But find that person and help that other person from the other side of the line make your argument along with you. It might help.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. So here's some key questions that we think we should focus on, and that's a great transition into this slide. Sorry, Mike, did you have something?
I was just going to say, when this transition happens for me the last year and a half, 2 years, this is more communication, spending a lot more time outside of the department.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on your staff because that can kind of blow up on you. Because if they get to a point of feeling neglected and thrown to the wolves and you haven't even seen it coming, it can really be a management issue.
Yeah, good point.
And you're up to a new thing.
I don't know if we need to go over all of these, but maybe I'll just read them really quickly, and then if there's anybody that has a reaction to any of them. Some key questions: should IT be a leader for where our institutions are going? Should we centralize technical staff or expert users in IT? How to get senior leaders to advocate for IT? Do we invest in more internal staff skills or outsource? Can we advocate for infrastructure funding with content projects? That's not really a question, is it?
How can we?
How can we get partnering departments to become IT advocates and not just SLT?
That kind of goes to what you were saying.
But what you're saying,
Yeah.
absolutely. Should IT continue to outsource services, not only staff? Email, file share, more, the cloud. So any thoughts around those questions or
Is
answers
it yes,
to that?
yes, no, yes?
Very simple.
Yes, yes, yes.
Outsourcing is great in so many respects. The only thing to be really aware of is that if it's still in-house and things fail, it's your fault.
Yes.
If it's outsourced and the company's bad, it's your fault.
It's your fault.
So you can't necessarily win in that argument, but the whole thing is, with all the other stuff of having the rest of the corporation engaged and understanding the situation, then there is a lot more tolerance for things that may go wrong in the future.
Yeah.
But there's also the problem of what should be long-term is short-term memory. And so they forget about it quickly, and then you get back into the same ball again.
Somebody made the point in the session yesterday about put everything on the cloud, and it was Amazon that basically everything went down. And saying their service went down, they had a big disruption. And obviously that's a bad thing, but also Netflix went down. So if Netflix can go down, then it really isn't your fault. It was quite a good one that it sort of actually tells people that it does just break sometimes.
Yeah.
You can't. You can be at the side of the road for hours and it just happens. You've got a lot of responsibility because everything goes through you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if Amazon can go down for 3 days, surely we could go down for a day.
So can help you. I would say with outsourcing, you're right in that it is still your sort of decision to make something, and some outsourcing is just so no-brainerish that we should do it, and some is sort of nearly there, but actually we don't quite know whether it's really quite as good as it's being sort of said to be. I mean, hosting generally is a fairly easy thing to outsource, for example, but there are lots of, so something like a development system or a marketing system where everyone's personal data is in it, when you outsource that, that's a much harder thing because, things working with APIs is fine, but how secure is everything? There's all sorts of things where, I mean, it comes back to risk assessment, but it's generally, yes, if you can just buy it instead of doing it yourself. Somebody said, you don't pump your own water anymore, do you? So there are shifting levels for that.
I think that there's an oversimplification as words become more marketing driven and less like when the cloud first came out, I was like, what the hell are they talking about? What is this? Co-location, hosting. These words always existed, but they called it something else, and I got very confused. And then it became very simplified because it became more universal to everyone. Everybody started to get into it a little bit, and then that oversimplification became this way which everybody had an opinion about it. And then, to me, somehow the outcome of that was people were trying to be right instead of doing the right thing. So you got emotionally invested in an outcome. Let's outsource, let's in-house, let's do this. And I found myself also, so I always had to try to remember in all these IT discussions not to oversimplify it, not to put a cookie cutter solution to every one of your solutions, and don't try to be right, just do the right thing. And that's an interesting shift because we'll eventually do the right thing, but I don't have to be the one that was right about it. My marketing director could be right about an IT solution. Heaven forbid.
But I also wanted to say, about outsourcing, you still have to manage it, and you still have to know what's going on,
And you have to have an ironclad relationship and a really ironclad contract with them. And a lot of people, especially in your finance, figure, well, if we're outsourced, it's going to save us money. Not necessarily.
Right.
If you're only going to outsource because you think you're going to save money, you didn't think of how outsourcing actually work.
Right.
You have to look at efficiency. You have to look at the big picture here.
It's resources that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what
and a lot of these things, a lot of these people are pushing to outsourcing because it's the current buzzword.
Exactly.
Right.
They want to go to the cloud because that's the new thing. It's like, let's actually look at what you're gaining, what you're losing, and where you need to actually be according to what your project is. And, again, like with our development staff, we still don't have, anybody who's truly working from home yet. So going to the cloud is benefiting us how, once we were actually having people who are working remotely a lot, okay, well, let's try VPN over that and see if that actually solves your problem instead.
What's the economy of scale to that?
It's
Jeff, you have your outsourcing is a unique situation because it's not more cost efficient, but it's allowing you to do more things.
Exactly. We're cost neutral, moving from doing everything in-house to doing outsourcing within the Harvard bubble, but it just made sense for us so we can refocus.
Right.
What I was saying is, outsourcing doesn't, like Graham was saying, it doesn't relieve your responsibility, and you still need to know what that person is doing and keep up with what they're doing.
You have to manage those contracts.
And you have to manage it
very carefully.
Yeah, and you can't outsource networking and put someone who doesn't know anything about networking in charge of that person.
It's I keep saying this, but it's like there's just a perpetual communication problem. I feel like that's we just need to work on conveying the fact that all of these new shiny things are so easy for you to grab and pick up and use, but there's a whole set of other challenges behind it, and we just need to communicate better on those fronts.
A little bit different twist in your lemon bullet made me think of it is we're doing something that I would call cross-sourcing, which is not insourcing or outsourcing, but I've literally been deliberate going around the organization, marketing, development, and finance, and picking people that had what I thought were the skills, and I bring them into my office and I teach them how to do IT and teach them the skills, and then we build that trust. And so they are not a solid line to me, but they're kind of a dotted line to me, and they're my extended IT now.
And that's sort of like building those advocates within the other departments. You know,
But
that's the
actually
same
raising them up,
concept.
So
You know.
it's more than advocacy, it's actually teaching them
Yeah.
how to do IT the
No,
right way.
I think that's good. More training for sure. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Do you think that outsourcing might be a cautionary tale of losing expertise in your IT department? Is there a risk that as we're offloading some of the easy stuff, that some lose some competency?
For me, that's my concern, and I haven't. So network engineering is sometimes not necessarily a skill that we can afford to have on a full-time basis, and so we try to do the tier 1 work and outsource that. However, systems administration for me would be something where we need that almost on a day-to-day basis and constantly building and improving the servers in the environment and, you know, blah, 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 all the way through. And I wouldn't want to lose that skill set for the size that we are. So I think rebranding your Gmail under a corporate for a group of 25 employees is a fantastic solution to being an Exchange expert when you have one staff. But if you have 500 to 600 mailboxes, I don't think I want to do it at that point because there may be things that they need and do. So, you know, that's where I said, you know, you got to be careful. And I think we're all very aware of it, is what's the right role of that outsourced and that vendor and find the mix and match there for sure.
I think it depends on size of organization. So being the one man or one person IT shop, I actually see it as the opposite, I guess, perspective, in that I'm the risk if I'm expected to have all that knowledge bottled up in me. Like, if I leave the door or I get hit by the bus, like,
you can't go on vacation.
No.
Yeah.
So I try to sell it that way and say, hey, you want to have another company in here, you know, helping me out doing these things, because if I leave or something happens to me, CAF is not going to be in a good position. So I want to distribute that knowledge, and I try to sell it that way and use that.
Yeah, we went from having like 2 sysadmins to having an entire bench of sysadmins support our server. So there was a no-brainer there, you know.
So we only have a little bit of time, so go ahead. I just want to go to
just quickly on that. I think part of the thing, like with Exchange and those things where you're talking about you have a specialist for a particular part.
Yeah.
The great thing about moving, even I think for large corporations like yourself, would be that you no longer have to manage the hardware in conjunction with the software.
Mm-hmm.
And that is huge. I mean, just managing the amount, I mean, everyone knows Exchange is a beast and the requirements that it takes. And just for you not having to pay for that server and having the ability to scale up and down hardware-wise, you still need a specialist for Exchange.
Sure.
That still has to be managed.
But the cloud,
the overall costs is massive.
There's a lot in there. And there's also risk assessment of exposing my data in the cloud and who do I trust more, you know, my network and my sysadmins versus the cloud sysadmins and protecting us.
And some of that's control too.
Here's some questions that we won't be able to cover today. We have a few more minutes. I'm just going to, we talked a lot about central versus outsourcing. We did not get a chance to bring your own devices, but maybe Andrew can quickly talk about that, and Andrew and I can fight over that some more. Personal devices and bringing them into the workplace, how to deal with that. Can we be a place for infrastructure and can we focus on infrastructure and be a place for innovation and collaboration? Are we lazy? And I'll just quickly comment on that. I added that last night because I went to a session, and in this session, it was a digital engagement session. Basically, they said that IT is lazy and they should just do what we say and just do it. And I was like, oh, really? We're still there? Are we still? Are we really still here? And that's to Jeff Grander's point. We're clearly not doing a good job of being good relationship builders and communications. I think we're getting better. But if they're just saying, I mean, I wanted to stand up and just, I didn't even know what to do. I was so frustrated by that. Are we barriers? Those are related in other topics.
I think you could break them down by saying that they're just IT people with maybe a newer name wrapped around what they do.
I like that one. Turn it around.
One thing on the bring your own device, I mean, I know most of us have issues about, you know, not being able to control the device. And Lord knows where that device has been and what it's bringing into our system.
Yeah.
But there's also, one of the things that I've run into with a lot of organizations is there's hidden resource at that point, where if a person leaves and a new person comes on, and they're expecting this person to be able to do the job the same way, well, we can't do that because we don't have the laptops, the this, the that, the projectors, everything else that this person brought with them.
Right.
That was their own personal stuff, and suddenly there's this expectation to maintain a certain level of work, but we don't have the operating cost to be able to, because we hid it basically in that person bringing their own stuff.
You're no longer a homogeneous environment. The tool sets are different. We're no longer using standard corporate. All of a sudden there's 10 different project management tools that are being used, from Basecamp to Asana to all the other cloud-based, and everybody's using them, and I'm using 3, and it's a full lack of standardization, and it's a challenge for us. So, yes?
I work for Acoustic Guide, which is an audio tour company, and we're now in the app world. And one of the challenges we have is with bring your own device for visitors. That they get there and
we think it's a fine solution.
It's like a valid question to you guys. Does this just add a whole nother level of aggravation to your worlds when you have the terms that they have to sign off on before they go onto your wireless network? They don't understand even where to find it on their own phone.
No, it's a wave that I've been saying out loud. The wave is not gonna, it's coming, and the first entry point was the mobile devices, and we do make them, at least that. The only thing I enjoy is wiping the phone after they leave. But
I think it also adds another layer of expectations of experts to our staff, as everybody's bringing different devices in, and we're supposed to be the experts on those and know how to use them and know how to help them. And even though even though we don't support personal devices, who doesn't do something when their director brings their laptop with a blue screen?
And the director goes around, look at my new computer that I brought in that they're supporting. And we're like, shh, no, don't say that. But my only question that will leave you on this is that I am not sure, coming from the larger group, that the increase of help desk requests for personal devices is as meaningful as my staff says it is. I'm not positive that that's going to have the impact that that's the reason that we're using it. I do get concerned about the risk and where those computers have been, and are they, can we really put them on our network? And it is a huge vulnerability from risk assessment.
You can sort of devolve some of the responsibility out, so that you can say, you've got, instead of we will provide you with a business machine, everything we've got policy desktop rollout, you can say we'll provide everyone with an allowance. You've got $500, whatever it is, that's the buy what you like, but you're responsible for making sure you don't buy a copy, basically. You've got to make it work, so if it doesn't work, you're on your own. All this stuff. But you can.
And I also think it's one of those situations where we have to say yes, but we can do it, but it's going to incur more cost and more time and more training.
Well, here's the huge sign that I had on this was when we bought into a new enterprise of virus protection. They matched us 1-for-1 for free the home versions of their virus protection, because they're like, okay, pretty much everybody you've got is also going to want to get in connected from their home. Give them this.
That's a good point. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.